partner and head of the project's infrastructure and construction team at Fortansti. So welcome to the second of our webinars focusing on the trends and transformations being brought to the construction industry by modern methods of construction, or MMC. We have some great speakers lined up today. Have a little housekeeping first, and then we'll get down to business. So please can I ask that only those speaking have their camera and microphones on. So if you could all just check now, make sure that you're muted, that would be much appreciated. We'll have two speakers, then a short breakout session where you can get to know some of your co-attendees. You'll be allocated to breakout rooms. Please do stick around for that, followed by another two speakers and then a question and answer session at the end. And you can either submit your questions via the chat, or you can email one of my co-hosts, Paul Dennis at Arup. That's paul.dennis, D-E-N-N-I-S, at Arup. And I think Paul will probably pop his email address in the chat function as well. If you want to remain anonymous with any questions and answers, do please let Paul know when you email him. And of course, you're very welcome to leave your LinkedIn details on the chat. So you're hosted today by the Bristol Brownfield Group, a collaboration between Alder King Property Consultants, Arup and Fortansti. So just three industry collaborators with a shared vision of delivering great business outcomes together, fostering greater connectivity between business and industry teams, and hopefully unlocking our potential to do more impactful work, demonstrate wider value, and make the whole process of developing and delivering brownfield projects better for everyone involved. And if you'd like to hear more about that, you can please drop us a line, do get in touch. Now, since we last spoke about MMC in our first webinar on this topic in mid-July 2020, an awful lot has happened, hasn't it just? Not just in our daily lives, but also in the MMC space. Yes, there have been challenges, but the industry, I think, is definitely responding. We have the Build Back Better mantra with government and local procurement frameworks all promoting off-site construction, as well as, I think, having seen some of the benefits of MMC and off-site manufacture, both in response to the pandemic and in everyday issues such as dealing with unforeseen site conditions, planning or permitting issues, whilst avoiding that material impact on development programmes. We have the Build Back Greener agenda, where I think MMC promotes net zero carbon in its factory controlled environments with precision in design, allowing for customising projects and embedding energy efficiencies. And our speakers today are going to tell us about some great examples of how MMC is helping them and therefore is helping all of us to build back better, build back greener. And so, without further ado, I'll hand over to our first speaker, Lisa Saunders of YTKO. Now, Lisa is responsible for YTKO's construction-related projects across the southwest of England. With nearly 10 years' experience in the construction sector, Lisa has gained a plethora of knowledge within all levels of the supply chain. Lisa also has a clear passion for diversifying and supporting innovation at every opportunity within the construction industry, and is going to speak to us today about the Constructing Modern Methods, so CMM, digital toolkit. Over to you, Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ian. That was a very nice introduction. So hopefully, I can give you a bit more insight into what it is that we're here to discuss today. So as it says, my name's Lisa, and I'm here to talk to you on behalf of a project called Constructing Modern Methods, CMM. And this is a project that is managed by YTKO. But before I go on to explain Constructing Modern Methods, I need to take you back. Oh, I think we've got a message here to say that we're not seeing the slides. I don't know, is anyone else having that same issue?
Hello.
No, Lisa, I can see the slides. No, No, I think we're saying
Okay.
everybody can see the slides. Let's proceed.
Let's carry on.
It's never perfect with these things, but yeah.
So yeah, I'm taking you a little bit back to where it all began, just to give you a bit of an insight. As someone from a more traditional construction background, I found that the rise in modern methods of construction has been something that we as an industry fear and potentially put off embracing for what can seem like some really valid reasons. However, data from the last 10 years shows that the construction industry has been delivering on average 100,000 less homes than we need to achieve those newish targets that have been set by government. So I'm sure we can all agree that anything that will help us tackle that long-standing decline in skills and the ever-increasing demand for housing is going to be really welcome. With the claims that MMC has the potential to be significantly more productive than traditional methods, allowing more homes to be built more quickly, addressing the skills and labour shortages, and improving the quality of newly built homes, is understandably an area that needs further exploration. Last year, I was invited to speak at the Constructing Excellence webinar around future skills and the training and employment landscape within the built environment and the impact that MMC potentially will have on those. And I think whilst making sure and doing my research for that session, I found a bit of a very scary stat, which I wanted to share with you. And it is that only 17% of construction SMEs have any knowledge of MMC, which still resonates with me now. This was last November when we joined for this chat. And I think it's really clear that with MMC becoming a viable option for local authorities, we also need to ensure that there's a supply chain to match the demand, or potentially we're going to risk a whole new skills crisis, as well as trying to fight our way out of the one we currently have. So just moving on slightly, I'm sure most of us are aware last year Homes England commissioned its own research into MMC to aid innovation in the construction industry. And this will go a long way in building confidence in those solutions, providing that critical evidence that we need to make those decisions and share best practices. And another research and development project, which is where Constructing Modern Methods was born, is the Enabling Housing Innovation for Inclusive Growth, which is an extremely catchy title. I think you'll all agree with me. It takes a bit of getting used to make sure you get the words all in the right order, but we've nailed it after quite some time. And this is led by YTKO, and it involves a consortium of partners, including, as you can see, Bristol City Council, Bristol Housing Festival, BRE, and 9 leading modular housing companies. I wanted to put them all on here, but the slide becomes incredibly chaotic. So forgive me, but we'll put the details in where you can find more information about this project. And by trialling new methods of house building, the project aims to improve the speed, cost and social value of nearly £78 million worth of housing that's set to be built in Bristol over the next 5 years. Using traditional methods, we know that it's not been possible to provide enough homes to tackle the mentioned housing crisis. And the funds provided by Innovate UK will enable YTKO and the consortium to address those barriers to the delivery of new homes in a real coordinated manner and create a nationally replicable delivery model, which encourages that use of MMC solutions, balancing the supply of new homes. So under this project, Enabling Housing Innovation for Inclusive Growth, there were 3 main pillars of work within this project. And I'll go through very briefly about each one, and it will just give a bit of backstory about where Constructing Modern Methods came from. So the first was around the work being led by BRE and the 9 MMC developers, using the Innovate funding to trial new technology and manufacturing processes. And there are lots of projects that are now underway in this under this umbrella of the Enabling Housing Innovation for Inclusive Growth, including L&G Modular Homes, who are obviously here today as well. But one example of a completed project, and that's at St George's Park in Bristol. In the car park there are 1 and 2 bedroom homes effectively on stilts that have been developed and delivered by Z-Pods for young people working with the YMCA. And they offer sustainable and innovative first homes to a group of individuals that are in desperate need of somewhere that they could call home. And this just the one example shows that this is not just about the construction method, but about new ways to support communities as well. And it's an amazing opportunity to highlight how MMC is able to fill the gap on the housing crisis, even in the most unusual of places. And the second pillar is around the council innovation enablement model. Again, nice, easy, catchy title. And this is where Bristol City Council is bravely shining a light on itself to learn lessons on how we deliver MMC housing to make sure procurement, legal, planning, development, all of these different parts of the council to work better together. And it's a really brave piece of research and mapping, which will hopefully deliver some really valuable resources and toolkits that can be used going forward. And it's worth mentioning that, that this is not just South West of England innovation. This project, enabling housing innovation for inclusive growth, has been designed in such a way that it will ease the dissemination of these models, principles and innovations to other councils throughout the UK where possible. It's not about making a widget that makes one type of housing work better. This is about unlocking the enablers and wider authorities to meet their targets. We're not just unlocking the system innovation, we're unlocking the processes, that whole journey to be able to give the scale that Innovate UK can see that's required. And both of those two pillars there support the third output of this project, which is to develop the optioneering toolkit. And this is constructing modern methods. So as we know, the numerous blockers currently to MMC around unknown risks, how to interrogate new data to make those solid decisions and build new business cases. So CMM's digital toolkit is bringing together the confidence and decision making. And as the number of MMC manufacturers and suppliers increase, it's going to be so difficult for any one individual or organisation to be aware of what is available on the market. So this tool is about making the full spectrum of products visible and accessible to those decision makers and helping narrow down the field to a number of possible options based on local policy and project specific criteria. As MMC is becoming politically and environmentally more critical, we know that there's an urgent need to know how to embrace and engage. And this is where the digital toolkit comes in. So it's empowering and equipping local authorities to embrace and engage. MMC and house building, I'm sure you'll all agree, is exciting, it's evolving, but it is a relatively immature area with a conservative industry. So new companies, novel technologies, unproven products does bring risk. And to help this evolving sector grow and mature, local authorities need to be able to partner with new companies and pioneer the use of those technologies in order to champion innovative solutions for specific sites. So it's recognised that an appropriate and robust process really is necessary to avoid the selection of MMC products and suppliers based on relational, timely or other largely subjective assessment criteria. And such a process should not, however, eliminate the selection of specific suppliers where there is an evidenced business case. And where MMC is not suitable for a specific site, this process should also flag this and provide justification for traditional alternatives. So moving on to the next slide, this kind of wraps up here what I've been rabbiting on about for the past 8 or so minutes. Last week, a new £1.1 billion procurement solution was launched by Constructing Modern Methods and the South West Procurement Alliance, with the aim here to unlock off-site low-carbon housing. And the solution that we have designed has been built by those 3 work pillars within the Enabling Housing Innovation for Inclusive Growth, which will allow local authorities to analyse the marketplace and define their requirements before procuring against a dynamic purchasing system. And the DPS, combined with the Constructing Modern Methods tool, would enable social housing providers to input their specific requirements and match them against an extensive list of approved off-site suppliers. And this will provide an affordable housing solution without having to have spent many months researching the market and make sure that it's really fit for purpose. And I just want to kind of wrap up really by saying that this is much more than just launching another procurement solution for off-site MMC housing. And it's really about driving that real innovation in how we create outcome-led procurement, something which the government we know is keen to implement in its recently published playbook. So for anyone that is interested in knowing a bit more with regards to the details of the low carbon offsite construction dynamic purchasing system, all of this information is on Pro Contract, and there are sessions that are out there already that you can book in and join us to find out more and register your interest. So I will add those details into the chat function shortly. But that's kind of everything from me, and I'm still within time, so that's quite good for me. I like to talk a lot. So back to you guys.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Lisa. Some great examples there, I think, of innovation and collaboration, so that not working in silos, best for industry, and I think, you know, really sort of driving innovation there. Now, our next speaker is John Baker of Modomo. John has over 25 years experience of development in the built environment. He's recently supported the public sector on major regeneration projects, experiencing firsthand the challenges with housing delivery. And as a response to this, John co-founded Modomo, a meanwhile housing pioneer, transforming unused land into beautiful, buzzing places to live. Modomo's homes are designed for relocation, so once a project lease is up, they're moved on to reinvigorate a new city space. As Chief Development Officer, John leads the company's product development and project delivery for meanwhile housing throughout the UK and Europe. Over to you, John.
Ian, thank you very much. I think you provided most of the presentation there, but great introduction, thank you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak to you. I'm going to provide a brief introduction into Modomo, so I'm going to rattle through some slides, but please reach out to me and ask further questions. This really is an ideal time to be talking about MMC as we're working on our first project in Bristol, and we really do believe that Brownfield land development provides, you know, a significant key to unlocking the housing crisis, not just in the UK but across the world. So a key part of what we do, you've heard it as part of the introduction by Ian, that we are a meanwhile housing developer, and that really is about the delivery of homes now, but leaving a legacy of change for good. It's a key part of our strategy. If we could please move on. So we are a housing pioneer, and as Ian said, we're transforming underutilised land. So brownfield land development that isn't being used to its potential into beautiful, buzzing places to live. That's often in advance of housing development, or it might be whilst planning is taking place, infrastructure connection, or where planning policy is taking time. We offer an immediate solution now to the housing crisis, and we do that using modern methods of construction, volumetric response to housing. Next, please. So who are we? There's three of us in the management team that lead the business, and we come from across the development industry. We're backed by Roundhill Capital, one of the leaders across Europe and the world in terms of real estate development, and we've got some great partners that we work with from Good Economy, who has support us in sustainable fundraising, and other partners including surveying companies and architects. Next, please. We're powered very differently. We take our inspiration from our experiences in the development industry, and we're socially responsible, but extremely passionate about what we're doing. We don't just want to deliver homes. What we want to deliver is exciting new places that create a community feel. At the heart of what we do is sustainable design and operations. That's absolutely fundamental for us when we're creating meanwhile places, meanwhile developments, that we absolutely embody sustainability into how we go about developing the environments, and how it then transitions into the next stage of development. Really key when we're creating these temporary locations in advance of permanent development. We focus on people. We don't focus just on the homes. We focus on how a community is going to grow once we start. Who is it? Who are we building for? How will that audience, how will that community, both residential and economic, grow within that the development and ripple out into the regeneration area beyond and the existing community. We're currently pre-registered for B Corp, a status that identifies that we really bring these values to the centre of our organisation. They sit as part of the legal structure of our business. You know, we really do believe in sustainability and ESG being at the centre of the business as we go out and deliver our projects. Next, please. So the current issues, just a couple of points here. The first one is land is not being developed fast enough. We're here to talk about brownfield development, but actually, as you walk around towns and cities, you can see large areas of our urban landscape undeveloped. Sometimes that is as a result of awaiting planning. But actually, this first statistic that we came across is that over the last 10 years, between 2010 and 2020, 2.5 million homes were granted planning consent, yet only 1.5 million of those were actually completed. That means that there's circa 1 million plots out there of undeveloped land. And we believe that we can respond to that. But that's just land that's been received planning consent. There's a huge amount of brownfield land out there that is available for development, at least in the meanwhile, to respond to the housing crisis. We're all aware that traditional construction takes too long, but meanwhile housing has an opportunity to plug the gap. We have an opportunity to, in advance of permanent development, to deliver amazing places to live using modular housing, volumetric housing that can be deployed and then removed from site. And this is where we can start to respond with local authorities to really hit those housing targets. Also, it's not becoming any more affordable to live in our urban areas, but we believe at Modomo that we can deliver affordable rents, even if we're leasing land and delivering homes on a meanwhile basis. Next, please. Our solution looks at 3 principles. We've touched on unlocking homes and underutilised land. Our homes are also then designed for relocation, and that's an absolute key part of our strategies. And we aim to connect and grow communities. So these are 3 pillars that I'm now just going to take us through. Next, please. So large regeneration sites, particularly brownfield, and we have an example here of a site in North London. It takes decades to unlock these sites. It takes a long time to acquire the land, to potentially remediate it. And during this time, we have large areas of the site that are used for meanwhile uses or even just left fallow. We believe that this is an amazing opportunity to accelerate development ahead of permanent housing, using bits of the permanent infrastructure as it starts to go ahead, but incubating key plots of land. It's a really exciting way of building a community now that's suitable for now. And we really want to work with public and private sector landowners and policymakers to identify how parts of our urban landscape can be developed now rather than waiting for those permanent pieces of infrastructure or for the development appraisal to work. Next, please. A core part of our strategy, which I'm sure you're scratching your head about, is how do we make our homes move? We use volumetric construction, and we've worked over the last 2 years to develop our design. And this is a volumetric design, and we're aware of that. It's steel based. And instead of looking at a design that optimizes a plot, which is bespoke construction, we've reversed that and looked back at how we can optimize a building design so that it's extremely efficient and can be deployed very fast. But really importantly, and unlike most methods of construction, it's about making sure it can be taken apart again without damaging the base fabric of that building. Our homes, our buildings are assets. They're not funded like traditional real estate construction, which is fixed asset class. Ours are funded like a mobile asset class, much like aeroplanes, cars. That means there is a very different approach to not just design, it's a product design rather than a housing design. But it means that we can deliver buildings fast to site, and importantly, at the end of a lease, which is 10 or 15 years, we can then move the homes, renovate them, and take them to a new location where they can deliver more impact. Next, please. As part of that, it's about circular economy. We really do look at every single component within our buildings in terms of how long, why are we selecting that component, how long is it going to last, and making sure that when it comes to end of life, we have full passporting for every piece of material that we use. At the moment, we've got about 70% of our built materials are asset based, and we really want to push that further. So at the moment, obviously the building is fully recyclable, movable, but we're also now looking at foundations. we're looking at the landscaping and making as much of it as meanwhile as possible and reusable. Our foundations are temporary and we take them back out of the ground again, even on poor conditions, and we design the buildings for that site rather than designing a foundation for that site for the hyper building that we need to make the development appraisal work. Next, please. As I said before, we really do focus on communities. The reason for that is because when we start talking with developers, we often find ourselves looking at brownfield sites and often remote without context. It's really important for us to carry out residential and economic interest to really start to identify which audience is going to work for this location now, but also making sure that it seeds and starts to create the ripples within that residential and economic community. Certainly over the last year, we've seen a huge focus on this and a change from commuting destinations to actually 15-minute cities and looking at how we can have everything within our doorstep, comfortable places to live, work, learn and play. And that's something that we hold really close. We want to develop communities that are self-sufficient and can grow and actually then provide an amazing backdrop to permanent development. Next, please. A couple of schemes we're working on at the moment. This is our first project, which has been being developed in South East London with Peabody and Berkeley Homes. Really exciting development here where we're looking at delivering a residential block, and you can see in the background the 6-storey building, which is co-living and live work on the ground floor. And this is centred around a real change to the construction environment, whereby we have Berkeley Homes, instead of having a hoarded traditional welfare compound, we're developing them a specific kind of building where they sit as part of a community. This is a kickstart, a community on a corner of strategic industrial land in South East London, a real transitional piece of land. And here we're bringing together a community hub at the centre of it, which offers food and beverage. We end up using some of the spaces that would traditionally be behind a hoarding as multi-purpose spaces, the induction rooms, the meeting rooms, so that are accessible to the community, alongside business incubator units. Next, please. And the first scheme that we started developing last year in the Netherlands, this is a project called Hembrugge, which is not far from the centre of Amsterdam. And here, this is a large brownfield site with lots of historic buildings. And we're working with the developer here to identify how meanwhile housing can be incorporated to immediately get a community feel and start to create place ahead of permanent development. This is a really exciting scheme, again, where we create a community cornerstone and then start to introduce affordable housing alongside to create that community feel. Thank you. And just before we move on, as we've started to work in Bristol, we're well aware of some of the challenges that are being presented. The new SDS planning policy that's coming through looks to demand an extra 30,000 homes in the west of England area, and a huge proportion of that is now being focused on brownfield land. But that planning policy is being looked at being delivered out over 20 years, and even the policy itself will take a couple of years to come through. And in the meantime, we still have a high demand for housing now. And Modomo really feels that it can support the west of England and the wider stakeholders to actually start delivering homes now and looking at rejuvenating brownfield land. So we'd love to hear from you and explore various opportunities in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Wow, that was great. That was, I mean, that passion for sustainability, I think, John, really came across. Certainly to me, it was infectious, and I think a fabulous ESG ethos too. So thanks once again, John. Okay, so now's the time we're going to go out into some breakout rooms. We're going to have a quick chat with some of our co-attendees. There'll be 10 minutes just to say hi. If you want some icebreakers, I thought we might try Rose Thorn Bud. So Rose, what's the thing, the product, the aspect that you're doing or seeing in MMC that you think is blooming marvellous? Thorn, similarly, what's the thorny issue, the one thing that you see as a thorn in the industry side? with MMC, and finally Bud. What's in your MMC world is just waiting to flourish and bloom given the right conditions. So Sarah, if you can pop us all into our rooms, we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Short chats with other attendees. Okay. On to our next speakers. So our next speaker, Aviv Brosilovsky from FortePro. Aviv is business development at FortePro, a Latvian-based modular manufacturer, currently delivering residential, student accommodation, hotels, healthcare, bathroom pods, and more modular projects in Europe. And Aviv is going to talk to us about volumetric modular construction and FortePro's role in the prestigious Offsite Construction Awards Residential Project of the Year 2020. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ian, for the nice introduction. And thank you for inviting me to take part in your webinar. I'll run quickly. I have a lot of slides to show you, but I thought it would be very visual presentation. So just as introduction, my name is Aviv Brosilovsky and I'm responsible for business development at FortePro. Forte is a Latvian-based company and we do 3D volumetric construction. Next, please. We would like to portray ourselves as your professional, open, friendly, and experienced partner for delivering your potential schemes. Next slide, please. Forte owns and operates two very large factories in two different cities in Latvia, one of the three Baltic states. And we mainly do apartments, student accommodation, hotels. We have expertise in healthcare design, and we also produce bathroom pods. To date, we've implemented projects across Europe. We are looking to expand even to the US market and Canadian market, as well as the Middle East. And we have a capacity of 120,000 square meter of production capacity per year. Next, please. You can see some of the examples of the projects that we deliver: hotels, residential, nursing homes, student accommodation, bathroom pods, and hospitals as well. Why modular? This is a question that in many cases comes up. So modular gives you a lot of advantages. Mainly the points that I've highlighted here. It's safer. You know exactly how much your project is going to cost with minimal deviations from your budget. It's much more profitable because we can save a lot of time when producing modular. We can cut up to 50% of the program in a project, again, depending on the design. It's much more efficient and safe because we take out up to 80% of the site activities and take them into our controlled environment in the factory. Very different than traditional construction. It's much quieter, which means that you can work in very tight location in city centers or in existing site where you want to expand your building, and it's much cleaner, a very sustainable solutions. We use high quality materials. We don't have waste in the factory. So it's much cleaner solution. If we dive into the factory, you can see one of our factories here. We use a linear production line, very similar to how you produce a car in modern times. So the modules are being built on tracks in the factory at 11 different stations. At each of these stations, a particular job is being done. And only after the product is being QA'd at the station, it rolls to the next station. The next slide will show you some of the stations. And you can see the guy that is putting the floor or the guy that is doing the tiling, that's their expertise and that's what they do all day, including the sprinkler system, furniture. We can provide a turnkey solution. So very high quality product that is being tested throughout the production process. And then you see how we pack the modules for the shipping and for the transportation, how we load them onto trucks or onto ships. And then an overnight sail, we're in Sweden, or 2 days, we're in the UK, in London. If you look at on the on-site, you can see how we lift the modules. This particular photos are taken in London. So you see how we lift the modules and we station them at the exact location. The team of installers is about 11 workers. We do it very quickly. We can install 600 square meters per day. So very quick installation process. Some of our reference projects. The first would be the first project we completed in the UK. Recently, as Ian mentioned, won the Offsite Awards as Private Housing Project of the Year. We are very proud of this. So this project was delivered for Berkeley Homes in Royal Arsenal in Woolwich in London, a residential building, 6-story high. And next slide will show you some of the internal photos of how the duplex apartments looks like. If you notice, the duplex apartments are made out of 4 separate modules, and then we can complete 85% of each of the modules. We have an action that is called seal and conceal, where we zip the 2 modules together on site after the assembly, and then we do some finishing works to connect between these 2 modules to complete the floor and a gypsum board in the ceiling, final paint coat. But basically 85% of the 2 modules were completed in the factory, including the kitchen, including the radiators, the staircase which you see in the photos, etc. These are the bathroom units, and you see some, the bathroom units. Again, another example is residential schemes we delivered in Norway, including a passive house, so we know how to deal with the thermal isolation. And basically, this is how the residents receive their apartment. Fully furnished, we can deliver even with the loose furniture, of course, kitchens. It's all up to the architect and the client to choose the finishing materials. Again, you can see some of the photos of these apartments and how we connect 2 modules to create 1 living space. Another project in Sweden, these are rental apartments, so we see a lot of build-to-rent schemes coming our ways. Modular, volumetric is highly suitable for these kind of schemes. So next slide, you will see some of the installation process. Again, very efficient, very quick. In 2 weeks, we completed the assembly of this project. And this is the internal. So basically, when you go into the modules, this is what you see. This is how it was shipped from the factory. Leave the vase and plants out, but all the furniture were in the modules. Again, the kitchen, a sort of a budget example. This is Scandic Hotel at the Stockholm Airport, 150 key hotel. And you can see what's unique here, that this building was pre-cladded in the factory. We have the capability of cladding the modules to some extent in the factory, again, depending on the cladding material. Of course, cladding in the factory saves time. And this is the internal, so 100% completion of this room in the factory, including the bed, the furniture, the loose furniture, fixed furniture, etc. And the bathroom unit, so soap dispenser, hair dryer, everything is there from the factory, as you see in the photos. Another example, Copenhagen Airport, 88-room hotel expansion of existing hotel. So we had to work very quietly, not disturbing the guest in the adjacent hotel. We have a 6-story freestanding building assembled in 7 days. And you will see the next slide. 7 days for completion of a freestanding 6-story building. This building is now weather-tight and can stand for 6 months. The main contractor then came in to do the facade, brick cladding, but we are going inside and doing the final connections inside. You can see some different rooftop modules, but when you step inside, that's what you see. So the internal fit out, as you see here, was 100% completion in the factory. A sort of a more stylish hotel, 4-star Clarion at the center of Gothenburg in Sweden, very tight location. This is, I would say, the Piccadilly Circus of Gothenburg. And you see how without any road closure, in the next slides, how we lift the modules in the center of the city over the existing building and position them in the courtyard of the existing hotel. And this is how it looks like from the inside. You can see very high level of detailing and finishing materials in this hotel, this Clarion hotel. This is a project now in construction, final stages of assembly, 350 rental apartments in Sweden, just outside of Stockholm, including the tallest modular building in Scandinavia. It's not so tall as in the UK, but still tallest in Scandinavia, 16-story. And you see how in snow condition, our work keeps on going, how we lift the modules and how we position them next to the concrete core. Moxie Hotels, we work closely with Marriott. This mock-up is the new Moxie 2.0 hotel just outside of Frankfurt in Germany. So basically developers can come in and see the Moxie room and decide whether to build it conventional or modular. Next slide will show you the internal. Again, this is how Forta can deliver your schemes. Next slides. Bathroom pods is another product we produce, and the next slide I think is the last one in terms of projects that I want to present. This is a new hospital in Denmark. We are now delivering 1,100, almost 1,100 bathroom pods for this new hospital. So we know how to design, as I described, for student accommodation, rental apartments, residential, healthcare solutions. We can offer you a great solution for high quality product for your schemes. So thank you very much. You have my contact details. Please LinkedIn with us. Forta runs events, seminars, webinars throughout the year, and we'll be happy to see you. Again, thank you for the team for inviting me to speak and to show you what Forta Pro can deliver for your next project, hopefully. Looking forward to working with you. Thanks, Ian.
Wow, thanks, Aviv. That was great. Great to see your expansion programs. And for me, the best part was seeing inside the factory. I'm a sucker for an on-site tour, and I thought that was great. So thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us. Okay, on to our final speaker of the day, James Reed from L&G Modular Homes. So during a 21-year career in the property sector, James has gained experience in all aspects of development, from site investigation to project management. James' background includes 5 years working for a land and development agency and 8 years in the affordable housing segment. Having worked on both client and supplier side, James has witnessed firsthand how the development process works from different perspectives. And James has an excellent knowledge of the West of England area and is based in Bath. Over to you, James.
Thanks very much, Ian. And Aviv, I may end up repeating quite a bit of what you've said, as our systems seem to be a little bit similar. Anyway, hi, as Ian said, my name's James Reed. Until recently, I was an ordinary land and development agent, but now I work in rocket science. Well, not quite, but the paradigm shift between traditional building, which has largely stayed the same for the last 150 years, and volumetric modular is a bit like the difference between a Roman catapult and Elon Musk's Falcon Heavy. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we do. Next slide, please. So Legal & General, you probably all heard the name, I'm sure. It's one of the UK's leading financial services groups, but we at Modular Homes are more like a startup. Stay with the previous slide, thanks. Led by a diverse team combining skills and experience gained in sectors like construction, housing and engineering, we're looking to tackle the UK property crisis by building modular homes to serve communities across the country. We can't do that alone, we need long-term partners, so we're happy to speak to you. Modular housing is exactly the sort of inventive and forward-thinking solution that's needed to the UK to help fix this property crisis and deliver a housing market that caters equally to all members of society. Those are lofty ideals, you may say, but then that's just who we are. Next slide, please. Having the support of Legal & General Group means that we can dedicate the time and investment that's really needed to realise the potential of modular home construction over the long term. Legal & General has been in business since 1836 and established itself as a market leader in sectors like life insurance and workplace pensions. But what you might not know is that L&G owns a number of residential developers. That housing team is made up of, amongst others, Cala Homes. We've got build to rent, both urban and suburban. We've got affordable homes. We've got later living, which is inspired villages and guild living. Oh, and of course, we've got modular homes. Now, as you can see, L&G has a strong background in the property sector, investing in urban regeneration, financing affordable housing, and we're now building affordable homes. We're pretty keen on the UK housing market, and that's because we think it's the right thing to do, but I'll tell you more of that later. Next slide. So here's a factory shot for Ian, the MMC definition framework from the government. It's a 7-category definition that enables a full and future-proof range of MMC, or modern methods of construction, used in house building to better understand and regulate terminology. Now, bear with me while I quote that document. So, Category 1, a systemised approach based on volumetric construction involving the production of a three-dimensional, government document. Basically, what we do is we build watertight boxes in the factory, they're loaded onto a lorry and delivered to site. Next slide, please. Now, what sets us apart is our commitment to modern house building techniques. This is based on the premise of exacting quality and repeatability and continuous improvement in the design and manufacturing process. At its peak, our factory can produce around 3,500 homes per year. And we have quality checkpoints at every stage of the process to make sure our homes conform to the design and building controls. We design and create individual modules, those watertight boxes I mentioned earlier, that come together swiftly and easily to ensure that our properties are identical in their fit and finish. Everything is expected for quality before it leaves the factory, which means things run smoothly when we're building. We spend less time on site and we can complete projects faster. In the picture, you can see the various stages of the factory process, which I could tell you more about, but I'm not giving up our IP that easily. Next slide, thanks. For such a large company, L&G is unusual. We've got something called inclusive capitalism, and we aim to make society better while improving the lives and creating value for our shareholders. To do this, we're investing in long-term assets that benefit everyone, from housing to renewable energy. And as I said, we call that inclusive capitalism. The future of our planet and economy has never been so critical. Using money as a force for good, businesses, communities, and individuals can help make society stronger, creating a world of inclusive capitalism, with the UK still facing such issues, housing, climate crisis, and an aging demographic. We discover the strategies that could be employed to tackle such matters. We are taking action against companies that are not acting responsibly and investing in urban infrastructure, clean energy, and research into how to improve later living and technology to improve lives. Thanks. Next slide. Our sustainable credentials are really important to us. We want to be economically useful, as I said. Our business adds value to the UK economy. We provide employment for people, both indirectly and, of course, through the supply chain and directly at the factory and as part of our construction teams. We want to deliver social value. We want to maximise what we do for each customer on each new site, and we prioritize placemaking and communities. We want to minimize our environmental load. We place a clear priority on reducing the environmental impact of our developments, and we do this in a number of ways. In terms of climate change, we have a clear plan in place to manage the carbon footprint of our operations. L&G as a whole group has insisted that all of the housing arms must deliver net zero carbon, and that's both regulated and unregulated energy, by 2030. So there's a real drive within the group to do that. And L&G Modular, we are aiming to do that by 2025. Next slide, please. Our homes. We want to make sure the housing market is fairer for all by designing and delivering high quality modular homes that are comfortable, sustainable and affordable. All of our homes are EPCA rated, and about 1% of new build homes are EPCA rated at the moment. So we are above and beyond there with the standards, and all of our homes meet the national space standards as well, making sure that they are great for actually living in. And they're suitable for all tenures. They can be affordable or they can be market. And our product range currently consists of 2 and 3 bedroom houses and flexible apartments from 1 to 2 beds. We can also, all of our products come with NHBC and BOPAS accreditation. That's the Building Property Assurance Scheme. So you can rest assured that when you're buying a home from us, it's fully mortgageable and it's just like any other product as far as the buyer is concerned. Next slide, thanks. Our homes are generally designed to be either starter homes or for the affordable market. So it's generally smaller homes that we're doing, although our portfolio is growing every year. But we're about making the housing market fairer for more. So we're never going to be building 2,500 square foot, 5 bedroom detached houses. That's not who we are. That's not what we want to do. We want to deliver lots and lots of good quality, smaller residential homes. The delivery of our products is very different to traditional build. We still have to build the foundations in the same way. The infrastructure still goes in the same way, but the modules, when they turn up on site, are simply craned straight into place. And these are the finished articles. All the fixtures and fittings are in place. The kitchen's there, the toilets and bathrooms are there, the heating system's all there, and the modules are simply clipped together, zipped up on site, and that's the finished weather-tight box there. Interestingly, at the moment, we still build the facade and the roofs in a traditional manner, which might seem like a bit of a retrograde step, but there are a number of reasons for this. One, cladding systems simply aren't as durable as bricks. 2, brick is cheaper. And thirdly, we can finish our homes in any way we see fit. So yes, we can clad them if that's what clients want, but we can finish them in any type of brick or any type of render, or we can even do them in natural stone. So we can easily meet the local vernacular. And because we can do different types of roofs, we can break up street scenes. They don't have to be front to back roofs. We can do sawtooth roofs. We can do flat roofs. So again, we can make this the homes seem different. And I would defy anybody that's not in the trade who saw one of our homes from the outside and the inside to determine if that was a modular home or a regular home. The modules themselves actually provide the rigid structure. It's not that facade. The facade's not load bearing. And for our apartments, they just sit together like giant Lego blocks, and they're all craned into place. And we could build them without the core being there. They don't need the core to hold them up. It's the modules themselves that hold them up. Of course, if we didn't build the core, you might struggle to get to your penthouse apartment. Next slide, thanks. So we've got 2 principal sites that we are building at the moment. As I said, we're a relatively new company, so we're still finding our way and just starting out. We've got a site at Portholm Road in Selby, and that's 102 homes. We've bought the land there, secured the planning permission, and we are on site, and delivery will start coming through in the summer of this year. And that's going to make a real change because this is the centre of Selby, and having all of these extra homes here is going to make a real difference. This is market led with policy compliant affordable homes. Next slide, please. And the other site we're doing is in Bristol. It's in Bonington Walk in Loch Lees, a more challenging neighbourhood. This one we've been working in collaboration with the local council, Bristol City Council, and we've bought the land from them, and we're now looking to work with them to take 51% of those dwellings as affordable, and then the remainder we will deliver as market homes, and that's a mix of all of our different dwelling types, 2 and 3 bedroom houses and 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. And again, that's going to help regenerate an important part of Bristol City Council's city area that they've identified for a long time. This site actually has been allocated for housing for over 10 years, and a previous application was thrown out. So that gives you an idea of, you know, our dedication of both working with the council, but also having the team that's able to get things right and make sure that we're delivering the right product. And Bristol were really keen to see something innovative. They wanted to support this kind of project, and working alongside the Bristol Housing Festival has meant that we've been able to get this site through planning, and now, as I say, we've just started on site and looking forward to delivering those homes later this year. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much.
Gosh, James, follow that in what's inclusive capitalism. What a great idea, great ethos. I mean, a fantastic example of what I was saying at the outset there, not just build back better, but build back greener. And I think investing in affordable homes market is a really great MMC story. So thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us.
No problem.
Well, James was the last speaker of the day. We've got a Q&A session now. Paul and Saria, I think, or Patrick, anybody like to share some of the questions that might have been coming in? I think we only have several minutes left, but we can keep going if we've got some really exciting and interesting questions.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much, Ian, and thanks to all of our fantastic speakers. That's some really good food for thought there amongst everything else. So I made a short list of some of the questions. So I think, James, you had a couple of questions for John from Modomo that you were posing in the chat, I think there. Did you want to ask them in person, or I can recount them if you prefer?
I don't mind. What did I say? I said, yeah, I was interested to know how your business model works. So who's your customer? So who's sort of, because typically, clearly you would have somebody lined up. You'd either sell homes on the market, or otherwise you would have perhaps affordable housing provision or build to rent. Whereas clearly that's perhaps not the case. And I was wondering who was your final end sort of resident as well.
Sure. I mean, we obviously don't sell the properties because they're only on site for an interim period, a meanwhile period of 10 or 15 years. It's a rental product, but we tailor the audience specifically to each site. So what we find is that we've clients, which we call landowners, partners that we work with very closely, and we then tailor the audience, the residential audience, our customers, specifically for each project. On some larger projects, specifically in the Netherlands, we're working with large housing associations, and effectively we're providing them with a turnkey meanwhile housing solution. So we can tune our solution based on, you know, who the landowner is and who the audience needs to be on those sites. But it's a rental product, and we can also tune the rent to make it affordable, or proportion of affordability to each site.
Oh, that sounds good. James raised another good point, which I was sort of thinking when you were talking about relocating your houses, John. How do you deal with the utilities and the services, you know, to and from each unit?
Long pipes. No, this is very much about site incubation, and we typically work with landowners to work off permanent infrastructure. That's not always possible, but we spend a long time working with landowners to identify the optimum place for meanwhile housing, and where possible we really do try and sit alongside permanent infrastructure and minimise kind of abortive costs. Really important part of it. Obviously not every site can have permanent infrastructure, and that's when we then look at bringing in utilities and infrastructure. We haven't quite got to the point in our journey where we can have an oasis kind of standing separately from the grid, but we do believe that's possible, and certainly on the continent everything seems to happen in the Netherlands first in terms of housing. They're doing that already. So there's some great examples there where we can learn here in the UK, particularly on brownfield development.
Oh, that's brilliant. If any of the other attendees have questions they want to ask, you can just raise your hand and then we can come to you guys. I can carry on working down my list.
Paul, can I just jump in and ask a question to John? Hi, John. I know we've talked about this earlier on regarding warranty providers, and I noticed today that we do have both Premier and ICW, as well as some of the attendees attending this session. So just a general question to all of you. I think one of the things, it's just awesome to look at all of the success stories, but looking at it from the context of end use and market enablers, market blockers, etc., what would you how would you view the existing warranty setup, whether it's NHBC, Premier, ICW? How do they interface with your respective products? So I guess that is one of my questions. My second question is, what would you then identify as a key market blocker currently, which you think we all should work towards removing, and in order to enable more MMC projects as such going live?
Are both those aimed at me or for a wider audience?
Well, I guess the warranty question, John. So perhaps your views on that to start off with.
No, sure. Thanks. You remember the first conversation we had back in December on this one, so you're now bringing it up with a wider audience. I mean, having a product, we become very comfortable with cars, aeroplanes and other assets that move, and we presume that they have warranties. Well, we know they have warranties. We have corporate responsibilities and funding and insurance that goes with them. But when we start talking about a house that moves, and anyone in the sector immediately starts rubbing their head and putting that, yes, it is a bit of a headache for us, but we will overcome it because we want to change the market. So taking those principles from other environments, other businesses, and bringing them to the built environment is the way to go. The homes are not going to have to move with people in them, so we are de-risking them already. But that point where at the moment everything is about a permanence of a home being located and a warranty being available for a short period of time. Well, for us that's very different. We need a product that's going to have a life of 50 years, and whilst it might not always sit in the same asset class, it might have secondary or tertiary markets. Understanding how you look at insurability and warranties attached to the building is absolutely fundamental. So I'm really interested to hear from warranty providers, insurers, and we've been working our way through the marketplace to really understand what happens and how do we work with them to look at those moves. We have solutions now, but they're more financing and security based rather than insurance.
Super, thank you.
Thank you.
I suppose we can push that same question out to James and Aviv. I don't know what their experience of warranty issues around their products are as well. Is that the same for you guys, or are you dealing with more permanent structures?
Yeah, well, basically we deal with the permanent structures. In the first project which I presented for Berkeley, we used the Premier guarantee. We are now looking into a BOPAS certification as well. So yeah, this is part of our strategy in moving forward in schemes in the UK.
Yeah, and we're similar. All of our products have got NHBC and BOPAS accreditation, because we want to make sure that, for our end customer, if that's a sales route or if we're selling to a council and affordable housing provider, that it's either fully chargeable or fully mortgageable. And those were the routes that we needed to go down to ensure that. And that was part of our process in setting the company up. One part of that was working very closely with them. The Legal and General Mortgage Club helped in that respect, in dealing with clients and getting them, getting mortgage companies comfortable with the idea that MMC this time is here to stay.
That's great. And last time we did one of these sessions, that's just reminded me, we had Graham Sibley on from NHBC talking about what they were doing in that MMC space and modular homes, and I've been following their progress and Graham's feed on LinkedIn and Twitter and what have you, and that's been really exciting over this past sort of 6 or 8 months.
Yeah.
I think just one small comment there, Ian. A lot of what we're seeing as well is all of these warranty providers are looking at obviously the products in the market, but also identifying very clearly for clients what the risks are and the issues are as well. So they are very much positively engaging with all of the manufacturers and clients in coming up with solutions which essentially enable the industry. So that's really good to see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, I'm mindful we've gone past 12:15, and if we're happy to keep going with some Q&A, appreciate people might want to drop off. I'll just quickly say, and then we can keep going with the Q&A, that we'll do some follow-up. It's been great to see people posting their details in the chat. We'll do a sort of a round-robin follow-up afterwards to all attendees, thanking you all for joining, and we can keep in touch that way. So don't worry about having to call us. We'll call you or contact you. And just say what a great session it's been today, and thanks, enormous thanks for our speakers. I've loved every moment of it, so thank you very much.
Excellent. Yeah, I had a question myself for Aviv. I mean, I really like the production line photos that you shared. I wondered, can you talk a little bit more about like the sustainability of the materials that you use for your modules, or?
Well, basically, we are very aware of that. First of all, is the fact that we want to reduce, for example, we work with other manufacturers to reduce the packing materials. This is one aspect. So, for example, sanitary ware manufacturers that deliver directly to our warehouse in the factory. We work with them on how to reduce and compact the plastic, the carton boards that they are using, because it's very different if you ship, as an example, 200 faucets to a construction site, or if you ship these same 200 faucets to a linear production line. We don't need all this packing, all this, protective wrapping that is actually waste. This is one example. Another example is that for us, the design process, as you may know, in modular is very precise. It's maybe the longest in the cycle is the design process. So when you design and when you are very accurate with exactly what's going to go into the product, yeah. So we are limiting, or we are minimizing the waste that we have in the factory. So cut to size boards, cut to size materials. So in that sense that, for example, if you buy a gypsum board, the standard gypsum board, then you cut it, then you have that waste. For us, it's a bit different. We work directly with the suppliers, directly with the manufacturers to get the exact product that we need. And in that sense, we reduce the effect on the environment. Modular, another example is that modular reduces the traffic onto the site. Yeah, because you don't have lorries bringing all the materials for the construction to the center city site. We are doing it in much more organized way in a factory, and then we simply deliver the modules to the site. So yes, we are looking at sustainable products, about how to reduce the environmental effect of producing in a factory and basically delivering a greener solution.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. That's answered a lot of questions there that I had. James, as well, I just had one for you. I was really interested to see the sort of net zero carbon information on your slides there. Are LNG looking at getting towards net zero carbon purely through offsetting, or are you actually looking at the manufacturing process and your supply chain as well?
We'll need to use a little bit of offsetting, but that's not mainly how we want to achieve it. The goal really is to ensure that our homes fabric first. We've been talking about that for years, but the great thing about volumetric build is we really can get U values that are right down, and that means that we're generating on site great air tightness as well, and thermal capability of the dwellings. The design has been such that we've minimized thermal bridging. We're using the best products that we can, and we can control all of that, which, and because that's all done in that factory environment with that control, means that that's easier for us. So when we built our first modules, without even trying, when they were clipped together, they were an air change of 3 meters cubed per meter square per hour. So that was without even sort of doing anything. So, you know, this was way below building regulations and not a million miles off getting to passive house. So it's that kind of ability that we get from building in the factory. And some of it's then done with on-site renewables. We've recently moved to all of our dwellings being electric heat now, so they're all air source heat pumps, although we can use other systems, so we can plug into district heating networks and things like that as required, and with a bit of PV on the roof at the moment. That's why I said all of our homes are EPCA rated as standard, and that was because it was relatively easy for us to achieve and for us to set ourselves up as a difference. We can get to net zero carbon on regulated energy just through using triple glazing and better U-valued doors and some extra PV. That would get us to there. And now what we're looking at is how do we get that unregulated energy down as well. So where are we going to do that? And that's why we want to do that fabric first process, because if we can do that, that means then adding the extra PV will be what gets us to true net zero carbon.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really good. I did hear of a contractor in the West who they'd achieved net zero carbon already, but just purely by offsetting, which had been likened to paying somebody else to be virtuous whilst you had an extramarital affair. I'm glad to hear that you're going for some offsetting, but mainly for the design. So.
Yes, there's no extramarital affairs going on as far as I understand.
Excellent. Well, people are leaving obviously to go to other calls. I've got one more question, which was for John. Again, it was just I'm interested in the reuse of foundations and the relocation of units that you've talked about a lot. Has that relocation actually been achieved on site, or is this just a design sort of capability at this stage?
It is achievable. We've done it in the Netherlands, but we haven't done it in the UK. Slightly different building regulations, but reusable foundations or even demountable buildings are absolutely possible. And the funding community particularly are really excited by what we're bringing forward. It provides a new approach, and funders are definitely the most nervous, I find, in terms of new solutions. So, you know, that's the key thing for us. It's an approach of not mass field concrete, and very much one about using components and different granular approaches to materials to provide those founding materials, even on poor ground. I don't know if that helps, but there's lots of systems out there.
Yeah, that's really good. I like you mentioned Thamesmead on the site there, and we'd had a look at that one as well within Arup, and it's easy. It's an easy sell for Thamesmead because you had the demountable buildings at the Olympic Park, so they can see that it works, see it's possible, and then it's just getting people's heads around. Yes, they're demountable, but they're also modular as well, and so it's that sort of mindset. So no, that's really good. Excellent. Well, awesome. I've exhausted my list of questions. That's great. Thank you very much for all the responses.
I think we could sit and we could chat about it all day, couldn't we, Paul? Yeah. I think that's the thing. But we probably ought to let everybody get back on with their days. To James, John, and Lisa for giving up their time, and I'm sure putting their effort into not just turning up, but effort into giving us such wonderful presentations. On to MMC webinar number 3. When will we do the next one? It's been such a great webinar.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone from me as well, and we'll let you all get on with your days and get some lunch, or maybe step outside and enjoy the sunshine.
Very good. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.